Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. Hey, we're sitting here with Jacob and Jozie Mader, and I'm excited about this. I'm going to put the camera. I always talk too much right at the beginning, and I don't really show anybody. It's on auto switching. I just showed April. We can't afford a guy who sits over here and hits these buttons, so I hit those buttons.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We're looking for volunteers. We'll take volunteers who wants to hit these buttons.
You could get one of those little dipping canary things, that...
Yeah, right?
I think Homer Simpson has one in one of the episodes, pushing the button at the nuclear facility.
Yeah, that would make sense. No, that'd be great. I know. I usually, I did a podcast just recently with somebody, and we talked for like a long time. They weren't even on the screen for the first 5 minutes. I felt bad. Anyway, hey, I'm excited to have you guys on here. We got to know you a little bit recently, and there was just so much I wanted to keep talking to you about at that time, and so I appreciate you guys coming in here and chatting with us. I got to bring up the first time I saw Jacob Mader's name, and I want to say this was in 2016-ish. I don't know. I need to search it or look it up. I should have done this already. We got this really good review at Big Fat Lunchbox. And it was so creative. People will leave nice things. They'll say nice things. But then there's next level. Then there's attention to detail. Then there was thought put into this. This wasn't just a review. This was super creative. We read that out loud in the BFL. And I was just like, that is so funny. This guy took the time to really create something. This is skill. Not everybody can do that. That was the first time that I've known your name ever since.
I probably rattled that off in 30 seconds, right?
I don't doubt it. Now that I know what kind of guy you are, I'm like, that was nothing for him. He didn't sit down and
Which is very funny because it's not like he's eloquent or anything at all with words.
This was super eloquent. I gotta look it up.
Yeah.
Hey, can you search that while you're sitting over there?
Yeah.
You should find that. She is the Google queen.
Was it on Google or was it on Facebook?
Facebook. It was on Facebook, I think. Oh. I think it was, yeah. You could probably go into our reviews and go way back.
I might be able to find it because I reviewed it, maybe.
Nah, it was so great. It's up there. It's up there in our top favorites. We had somebody, right? We had one, I call it my $1 million 1-star review. It was awesome. It was such a complaint about us that was everything about it only spoke volumes to why our,
Really?
Yes, it was well, if you really looked at it, everything he was complaining was just all these things that were everything you just said is that's because, that things are in demand or things, or this is blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I don't want to make this about us. I'm here to learn about you guys. But anyway, the reviews are funny because normally I try not to pay attention to them too much because they'll hurt my feelings or you'll get a big head or something. So I try not to get too into them, but I do appreciate the creative ones. And Jacob, yours was super creative. Did you find it?
I did not. I'm not the technological person either, so maybe April can. It's been so long ago. It's 8 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
To know it's still remembered though is pretty cool. I mean.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't hear your name or see your name on a live stream, or if you popped into a live stream or you were something or you comment. Oh, I always knew. I didn't know you, but I was that's the guy. I always thought about that. So, yeah. So now that I've known you, not that I know you a whole bunch, but just talking to you, getting to know about who you guys are, what's important to you, and all of these things, it makes a lot more sense. You are a creative guy. And, yeah. So this is the whole purpose of this podcast is it's we kind of get to just hang out and really sit down and just kind of get to know people, find out what they're passionate about. And I didn't realize that you were in your fencing business since 2014. I didn't know it went back that long.
This is our 9th year.
That's incredible.
Probably our 3rd or 4th year turning a decent profit, but 9th year. So,
No, that is awesome. Yeah, that is super cool. And then we were diving in. I want to dive into this right away. I was super impressed with this machine you built. It's called TrackMader.
That's correct.
It's infamously known as TrackMader. Or did anybody else come up with that? Or did you come up with that?
It was given to the machine. So the long story is, and we'll kind of dive into that here, is the machine was actually originally built in North Carolina. It was another fence contractor that I had met in Indiana, and he had been building a tracked post driver. And he got quite a ways into it and decided that I don't have the technical skill for this. I don't have the time for this. I'm just going to go buy one. So he spent at the time it was $150,000 on a tracked post driver.
At the time he bought the new one.
He bought the new nice model at the time. It was $150,000, give or take. And I don't know specifics, and we don't need them, but it's in about that range, we'll say. And he sold it to another fence contractor who was going to continue the project. And it sat for 2 or 3 years in his barn, and it never went anywhere. And he offered it up for sale. And I had been looking for a tracked base or something for a while because I had another post driver built in an old Toyota mine truck, which was a death trap. I told myself I'm never going to use it again because it was just too top heavy, and I was going to die if I kept using it. And so I
just remember those Toyotas. I just would sit in the back of those things and freeze on the way out of the mine years ago. Anyway, so when you bring those up, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. But it was in North Carolina, and he offered it up for sale, and I forget what the price was. And I said, man, I'd love to have this, but it was coming up on fall and winter, and that's the lean time, and I didn't have the money to spend on it. And he messaged me back and says, well, pay me when you can. And then we're talking, and like, well, I think we're going to go for it, and we figured it out. Another guy called me and said, I'll get it here. Pay me when you can. So these other two contractors, they do pretty well for themselves. And so it's like, okay, and so it started its long journey here. There was a group, they met together somewhere in I think it was West Virginia, and they built farm for a YouTuber, Stony Ridge Farmer. They built a bunch of farm fence, and that machine hitched a ride in one of the trailers there, and it hitched a ride from that place to somewhere in Ohio, from Ohio to Indiana, and from Indiana to Cody, Wyoming, over the course of probably 2 months.
So everybody was just kind of helping it get over here.
Everybody's helping, and it didn't cost me a penny. My only cost in getting it is going down to Cody, Wyoming, and picking it up.
It's a lot of weight, because at that point, what all did it consist of? Like the frame and tracks, or what all was there?
At that point, it was a motor, hydraulic pump, 5 valves, and tracks, and a frame, and that was about it.
Okay.
And of that, that's still there. Basically, nothing's in the same spot.
Yeah. When we're talking tracks, we're talking like tank tracks.
Yeah, these came off of the horizontal boring machines they use for digging under the roads.
Okay. Yep.
It's off a 16,000-pound machine for those. So
nice.
They're pretty stout tracks. The trouble is they're slow. Those machines are not slow, are not fast. Like, it tops out at less than a mile an hour. And so it's here, and the guy hauling it up from Cody, Wyoming, he called it. He goes, as jokingly, he goes, well, TrackMader's finally there down in Cody, Wyoming for me, and it was on a Facebook page, and or something like that, and it kind of went viral at the name of TrackMader. And then as I started adding on and building on it, the name just stuck, and it stuck, and I've ran with it, and some of my social media is called TrackMader, and it's just the machine. It is what it is. It's like it has its own personality and quirks, and
it's funny because like probably in your circle or your community of fencers and fencing community guys, like they all kind of know your machine just from those guys helping it kind of get across the country.
Yep. What was it? In October, we were in Indiana at this we call it the Fall Fence Forum, and there's 2 guys over there from the UK, Lincolnshire, England, and one of them comes up to me and says, I heard you built your own post driver. And I'm like, yeah, I did. He goes, you can't tell me that and not show me pictures. So I got my phone out and showed him a whole bunch of pictures and video, and they're like, that is impressive. Only it's in British English. I think it was more like, that's bloody impressive, mate, or something like that. And
yeah.
It was Fred.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Charlie, Fred. But it's just this machine. It's I venture a guess to say it's probably known across the world in the fencing community.
Huh. That's incredible.
One of the better homemade tracked post driving machines. Now I'm going to break my pat on my back saying that, but it's still a pretty impressive machine for what it can do and what I have into it.
Yeah.
Just needs a paint job.
It needs paint, my wife says.
It's be aesthetically pleasing.
It's 1, 2,
maybe,
4 or 5 different colors and a lot of bare metal.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, Maybe we could find somebody here to give you a good custom paint job and put the name of it on there all nice. We'll think on that. We'll figure that out.
The trouble is it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
So you hate to weld on new paint until you get it pretty well dialed in.
Yeah.
Thought about just like a rattle can black or something like that, but
yeah,
I haven't got that far. And the other problem is I don't really have a good place to paint something that big without. I can't fit it in my garage. I can't fit it. My barn's open on 3 sides, so the dust gets all over it. And
how do you haul that around? Like
just a gooseneck trailer. It's
okay.
9,000 pounds, I believe. I've never actually weighed it, but that's my estimate.
Wow. They don't have a cat scale in town anymore, do they? Or do they have like a...
I could use the mine scale at the smelter.
Okay.
You just kind of drive across that. But
okay.
I haven't ever actually got that far. Sometimes it's just better not to know how heavy your machine is.
Right.
I don't know. It'd be fun to do a little over-under or something with that.
Yeah.
Take some bets.
I did find that review.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
gonna hand it over to Jacob, and I'm gonna let him.
Oh.
Hopefully... Oh, good. Hopefully it's not... Hopefully I didn't build it up too much.
Had my first steak burrito today. I'm pretty sure they can Let me start over here. Had my first steak burrito today. I'm pretty sure they can drop that lame Great Wall of China off the 7 Wonders of the World list. Instead, add Big Fat Lunchbox Steak Burrito. It is that good. In fact, who really needs the 7 Wonders anyway when one outshines the rest so much? The wonder of the world. I like it. Who needs to see the rest of that stuff anyway when you have steak burritos? I have had other BFL burritos, and this one takes the cake. Let me describe it. It is a very full burrito wrapped in foil so you can eat it without a mess, consisting in this case of steak, french fries, secret sauce, and more. No cheap filler. It all tastes amazing. Quite possibly the world's greatest burrito.
That was so great.
There you go. Where can I get one?
That was so great.
Oh, that is awesome.
That was like, we read that and read that and read that. And we're like, who is this guy?
Because how long were you open?
I mean, what's the date on that?
That was July 2017.
Okay. I was thinking 16, but 17. So, because we didn't even start doing the burritos until near the end of 2016. And then we went all in on burritos at the beginning of 2017, I think. Yeah. So, that was great. Anyway.
I had a friend from New York passing through, and we met for breakfast, and it was in the winter. Like, well, we can go to the food trailer, get some BFL burritos, and he still talks about that thing every now and then, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. No, that did us some good back then. There was hard days.
Yeah.
Just to get some, and the creativity. I mean, we appreciated the compliment, but it was creativity. Anyway, it showed showed that you were attention to detail and creative guy. So it doesn't surprise me now that I get to kind of get to know you. That's kind of interlaced with everything that you're doing. It's impressive. I don't doubt that around in that community, people talk about like this machine that everybody's kind of helped along get over here, and that you've kind of gotten on the map with that thing.
That is amazing.
Although now that he wants his pilot's license,
I'm there with you. I want to also.
They've already told him that he needs to have an air mater.
Yeah.
Is the thing. So.
Of course.
Yep.
That's your brand now.
Air mater.
There was one at the last auction down in Absarki, but it went more than I had at the time, so I had to let it go.
That's funny. Why the pilot's license? What's and how close are you to that?
I'm in the very early stages, meaning I haven't hardly started. I'm just kind of researching.
Okay.
Dreaming. But just the ability to get anywhere faster.
Yeah.
And not have to take a commercial flight just appeals to me, because there's a lot of places I'd like to go and people I'd like to see, but it takes so long and I don't want to fly in a commercial, I call it the cattle class. So I just think a plane would be fun, and also, the ability to, I want something small enough that I can land on my property, because I have about 900,000 foot strip, but powerful enough I can take the whole family.
Yeah.
So my list is kind of interesting, pretty narrow from what I understand, but I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To have a plane, and
I agree. I'm right there with you.
Get away from work and house and stuff.
Yeah, just to be able to, hey, I want to go to Denver for dinner and
Yeah.
the night and be there in a few hours versus driving, or I want to go to the Black Hills or something for the weekend. You ain't got to spend half your weekend driving, and
Yep.
you can. I know that they say, or as a friend of mine says, if you have time, go by air, because something breaks or you get bad weather and you got to wait it out or whatever, go around. But just the ability to, I think the ability to fly somewhere is just be a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's just there's something about it. There's a lot of freedom to that. I don't know. It's just a different thing to be able to go do it and do it yourself.
Also to pack out elk from the backcountry.
Yeah.
Because that's cheaper and easier than horses.
Just listen to a guy on just a little half-hour spiel about backcountry hunting with horses, and I'm like looking at Jozie and looking at him and looking at another person. I'm like, light aircraft would probably be cheaper at the point by the time you get your good pack string, and it don't take nothing, no fuel, no food when you're not using it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
Very true.
I'm not sure about the legality of landing in the backcountry to pack out elk, but
you know what? I don't think it's too terribly illegal. No, not that I know anything about it, but I just know that there is a lot of backcountry airstrips that most people probably aren't aware of. And I can't remember where I saw that map at. But I saw a map of airstrips all over Montana of little, just like, this is a designated airstrip, and it's out here on state land, and it's it's just a grass runway. It's but I'll tell you this quick story. That one time we were at a fundraiser here at the Little Metra, I guess. I don't know I guess that's what it was called back then. I think that's where I was. I was at this fundraiser one year, and they were doing an auction. I can't remember the name of the fundraiser. They probably do it every year. And they were different people would donate things, and we all just bid on them. Well, somebody had donated a flight in a biplane, and they started off the bidding, and it was a local pilot, and he was like a flight in this biplane with him. Nobody was bidding on it, and I was kind of like, I can't believe nobody's bidding on this. Like, so they were going. It was getting uncomfortable for me. I was like, somebody needs to, like, that's exciting. Like, who wouldn't be bidding on this? I'm going to just start the bidding. I'll start the, somebody will, once you get these things going, it'll go. So I start the bidding, $50, and it just goes and it goes and it goes and nobody else bids. And I'm like, and they're like, sold. And I was like, I just bought a ride in a biplane for $50. Like, what is that? So anyway,
Awesome.
So they gave me this voucher, and they're like, yeah, contact so-and-so. Hey, do us a favor. Would you not tell him how much you paid for this? I was like, yeah, no problem. They were like, we don't want to discourage him from kicking in, we don't want him to feel bad. Anyway, I was like, yeah, we'll see. And here I am, I'm blabbing about it. I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him since then.
It's down the road a couple years, so
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah. So it was a big moment for me, though. Like, me and my kids, we went out there and I got pictures out by this guy's biplane. He had a hangar over here, and I think he was regularly a commercial pilot, but he had two planes in there. One of them was was just like a good old standard bush plane, and then the other one was this 1941 Stearman, and it was a biplane with the open cockpit, and I sat in the front and he sat in the back. And he just had this big old hangar. He just we pushed it out of there and we just took off. And I'm in this biplane. I'm like flying above the Yellowstone in the Stillwater. He's like, hey, you want to take the stick? I'm like, yeah. So he's controlling the rudders or something. And I'm up there steering this thing up the Stillwater. We're like 200 feet above the Stillwater River.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I'm watching the mine buses go down the road. And I was like, suckers. And I was just like, it was the best feeling in the world,
Yep.
And we got up to Absaroka, and then he took over, and we turned back around. We flew all around, and then we landed there. And it was such I was on this big high from that. And ever since then, I've always been like, gosh, I wish I had a little spot down there, a little plane, or just some type of thing where, you could go and have those types of experiences. Like, we live in Montana. This is a beautiful country, and to be able to go fly around and do those things, or jump over to Missoula or whatever. April is not a big fan of flying.
Yeah.
So,
But have you been in a biplane?
No.
It's different.
yeah.
It's
Small
different.
plane is a whole lot different than packing into the the plane at the airport.
Oh,
is-
I would much rather do that. I'm just flying. It's just a stupid fear. And I do fly, but I would much rather not deal with commercial airlines. I
Yeah.
hate them.
So I've been talking to April, and I'm like, hey, why don't you go get your pilot's? Like, let's both go get our pilot's license, because it might be a different experience for you when you like learn everything all about it, and like you're in control of it, and you know, things like that. I don't know. We've been talking about it. We haven't been able to pull. We're in that dream phase
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I totally relate
where
with
it
you on that.
starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got, other financial priorities at the moment.
I know.
I
It's
mean,
like,
you just can't throw the 10 grand or whatever at the pilot license at this
I know.
point. And
Yeah.
I know.
as much fun as it would be.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I agree. And that little airstrip is just right there. Like, I'm like, just mocking me all the time. I see those little planes come in and out of there. So, I don't know. Maybe someday.
Yep.
Anyway, I could talk planes and all that kind of stuff all day long. But you know what? This fencing company, what were you doing before that? I can see your passion about this. I didn't even realize there's like a fencing community. This is what's interesting to me. Like, it's not anything I've put any thought into, but we were watching videos of this, like a fencing competition. And most people are going to think, oh, swords. No, it's a fencing competition in New Zealand. He's like, oh yeah, it's a fencing competition. I'm like, a competition? He's like, oh yeah, New Zealand. And I'm like, fencing competition, like people watching. He's like, oh yeah, it's a big deal, really big deal, look this up. We get on YouTube, I pull it up, and there's these guys super intense, and they're like 50 fences in a row, and everybody's got their little levels out, and they're doing their thing, and they're building fence, and there's people in seats, spectators watching them. And I didn't even realize there's this whole world out there.
Till about 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't realize there was much in the fencing community at all. It was kind of, I was an island almost.
Yeah.
I always knew there was something better in the fencing community than what I was doing.
What were you doing?
Just your typical low carbon T-posts and wooden braces, and
Okay.
just the typical farm fence that you see. And I'm always like, this just doesn't, seems like there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better product. And I stumbled into this Facebook group of ag fencers, and just looking for anything, looking for kind of some community, because this is my job, and Facebook, the algorithm or whatever, worked to get me into these groups. And I started getting into these pages, and I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm a complete newbie when it comes to doing this. So I started following these groups and watching and learning and helping people, because I was doing better than some, and just I was able to help people improve their fencing product. And finally this thing came up called the Fall Fence Forum in Worthington, Indiana, and I'm like, first year I saw it, it's like, I think that'd be nice, it'd be fun to go to, but man, that's 2,000 miles away, and I don't want to fly. So I watched videos of it, and I'm like, man, next year I am there. There was 50 people there, just talking fence, building fence, breaking fence. Anytime you get into that deal, you make a better product by finding the weak spots, and they're finding the weak spots. And so the next year I'm there, and we're
In a shop smaller than this.
it was in a shop
Yeah.
building, probably about the size of your shop here. So we'll say the floor space available was 30 by 60 or something like that.
So people are coming from all over to this fence festival.
All over.
And it's in a building smaller than this one, but they're all traveling to this building
Yes,
to all get together.
And they all bring campers or stay in. It's in this little podunk town in south central Indiana that the nearest motel is about half an hour away.
And are they bringing in like vendors, or
No,
are they bringing in
It's at a retailer's place. It's at his farm. He's
okay.
the importer for a couple of different brands in the fence industry, and some fence industry reps are there. Normally, the first year there, it was the first COVID year.
Okay.
Was the first time I were there? I think it was. No, that was the
year
second.
before.
This is a year before COVID. So there was industry reps from New Zealand there, and I think the UK was there, and a couple other places, if I remember correct. And over there in those countries, fencing is considered a skilled trade, along with like your electricians and your bricklayers and your plumbers and your all these other skilled trades that you have to take an apprenticeship to learn, which is not so here. So there's so much to learn from these guys who fence for a living, and the standards are just so much better. I mean, you talk about the fencing competition. I helped to judge. It was one of the American tries at recreating the golden pliers in New Zealand, and we had a judge who'd actually judged there before. First off, you're judging in millimeters, which is really hard.
Yeah.
And two,
and what are they judging in millimeters? Like straightness?
like the levelness of the post. Like you can level it up and take your steel rod, your steel scale, see how many millimeters off plumb that post is.
Wow. And you went to New Zealand to do
I did. This was all in Indiana.
Oh, okay.
No. The winner of the contest actually got to go to New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
But I was just hey, Mader, you want to come judge? And I'm like, sure. And what am I judging? And I'm talking to this guy, and like, you're measuring in millimeters.
Yeah.
That how perfect the fence wire spacing is off the ground, or off the top of the post, I guess it was, and then how far the post was off the ground. And you're like, this is intense.
Intense attention to detail.
Oh,
Yes.
that is like, yeah.
And
millimeters?
I think it was like 5 millimeters off was a point, so it was 1/5 of a point per millimeter off. Or the staple had the wrong angle to it, or something like that. You deduct some points. I was judging wire spacing and staples. Doesn't sound like much, but man, you're looking at it and you're like, it's crazy to look at this fence and think, I'm judging this fence that's way better than anything I've ever built, and I'm here trying to judge this, and I'm like, every one of these fences is just so perfect.
Yeah.
That you can't. I mean, you feel bad every time you have to knock a point off.
Yeah.
But there was like 5 judges, wasn't there? Like, and
Yeah.
each one of them had a different job of what they were judging.
Yeah.
Were you feeling like, who am I to be judging
Pretty
this?
much. I was. Who am I to judge this fence, because this guy's way better than I can do, and
But they just need somebody to just measure that little thing and declare that that's what it is. And
there's a standard, you got to stick to it, and
Yeah.
you have to deviate. You can't deviate from that as much as you want to. Sometimes there's a standard there, and you have to. If you don't miss it, you get points taken off. And
yeah.
one guy, he had just beautiful fence, but he used the wrong staples through the whole project.
Is there are they dinging in points per staple?
Had to ding points per staple. That was the wrong staple.
I just want to see like the commentators. I want to listen to commentators
Yeah.
that are like, gee, Carl, I don't know. He seems to be da 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 da. But those those staples. There could be some type of I can't even think of the word.
Wrong
A penalty.
size.
Could be penalty there. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like a baseball game.
Yeah. Like I don't know. It looks like he's contesting it with the judge. He's been ejected from the field.
That would have been Hugh.
That would have been Hugh, but he would have said it in the New Zealand
don't
accent.
kick,
Right,
don't
yeah.
kick dirt on the judge. Yeah, like.
But so this contest, when they do it in New Zealand, it takes about 5 hours, and they use a handheld borer to dig these post holes.
Oh, so these are manly.
These are manly men. These are like you've had Cole Waltner on here. They make Cole Waltner look like a small dude. Some of these guys.
No. Oh no! Now I just want to watch Cole Waltner try to do one of those now,
But
because he's an animal, man.
The handheld post hole digger that I have is a 35cc motor from Harbor Freight, and it'll twist you around if you're not careful.
Yeah.
These guys are using steel chainsaw motors on their borers that are hopped up and ported, and
Hopped up and ported.
they will
Got some
catch you.
nitro added to it.
Just about, yes.
Yeah.
They will catch you, and they will throw these big guys around.
They've been
in a
chipped.
circle.
These borers have been chipped.
They're not running EPA compliant. We'll put it that way. But they're running these 5-foot long bits that I can barely lift up, and they're just plunging them in the ground. The contest over there takes 5 hours. Our guys here, our soil was so much different where we did it and harder that it took them 2 hours just to dig the first post hole. It's supposed to all be done by hand. And we're like, these guys are never going to, as the judges are like, these guys are never going to finish this, or they're going to kill themselves trying to do this by hand. So we ended up like, well, we're going to just dig the post holes with a machine for you, because if we don't, you're going to hurt yourselves.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we did that, and they still didn't finish. We had to modify the standard, but it was the first time we'd ever done it.
Oh yeah.
So,
So figuring it
learning curve, and I'm like, I am not tough enough to do this contest.
So in
Maybe
the future, I mean, did they do anything different after that, or did they?
next time they do it, they'll pre-drill the holes
Okay.
and tamp them shut.
I see.
So it,
That's what I'm
so
thinking.
it's-
Could you just dig it all out ahead of time to loosen it, soften it?
yeah,
and then
they'll
just let
soften
them
the
go?
soil and then do it,
Yeah.
which will make it a little more fairer of a contest, because you won't have surprises in the ground if you hit a rock or whatever.
Right.
Because where we did it is an old reclaimed coal mine.
Oh. Okay.
And strip mine, so it can be pretty bad.
Oh, I just think that's the luck of the draw. Everybody draw. Everybody draw for your lane, and everybody's like, "Oh, Larry hit a rock." You know, like Larry's out.
Well, that's part of the deal, but
because that's fencing.
yep,
Yeah.
that when you got to be that precise, you can't move
Yeah.
it. But no, but going to this fence place, this fence school we call it the Fall Fence Forum. I probably mentioned that. You learn so much of stuff that you just wouldn't even think about learning. You know, I learned there's an actual proper way to tie a high tensile wire, a fence wire, for like an electric fence or a smooth wire or even woven wire, where it won't come undone, because that's what people's problem is they tie this wire up and then the knot comes loose, so they declare the wire to be junk and they won't ever use it again.
Ah.
And that happened a lot when they first came out with high tensile wires. Nobody knew how to use it, so they'd wrap it like they're used to. And what would happen is, I actually have videos. You wrap it like a cowboy used to, just wrap 3 or 4 wraps, and then you pull on it with a stretcher, and you can actually watch this wire unwind itself.
Ah.
So every time you get a freeze and thaw and that metal contracts, it unwinds a little bit, and a couple years in, the wire's loose.
Now I'm all kinds of curious about what I did with my fencing. I'm like, I did my own fencing. I hate to admit, you never get to come out and look at my fencing.
It's okay. My neighbor does mine,
Yeah.
because I haven't touched it in 3 or 4 years.
You're too busy doing everybody else's.
I tell him you can have all the T-posts and material you want, but I don't
Yeah.
really have time to. Don't buy any clips or don't buy any posts. Just come get some of mine. But
Yeah.
and if I get a chance, I'll try and run around it. But it's been 4 or 5 years probably since I've looked at all of it. So.
Yeah. Oh, our fence is in rough condition. Anyway.
But if you tie the wire correctly, it takes no more time, and it won't come undone.
And so like I got loose wire. I don't know. I'm like all the time. I'm like, how's this wire loose up there? You know, like I'm
Yeah.
always looking at it. I'm like,
Well, and it's not barbed wire, so cows.
Yeah.
We have cows that roam around up there too, and it's not barbed wire, so they're
Yeah.
gonna mess with it. and-
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's probably a standard low carbon barbless cable. It's got 2 wires.
Yeah.
So that has been the barbed version of that has been the standard wire in this part of the country for decades, probably since the barbed wire invention. And the problem with that is it's a low carbon wire, and it stretches. 12% elongation is what it is. So it stretches up to 12%. So say
So if I got a 600-foot wire, like you're saying 12%, like I'm gonna what? I'm gonna stretch
Because you're gonna stretch it tight,
Yeah,
How many
you're
feet
gonna
is that?
gain.
60 feet.
60 feet before it will
Quit stretching.
it'll quit stretching. Yeah, the stuff that I use is a high tensile wire,
Holy mackerel.
and it's now that's saying it's probably going to break somewhere in there before
Right.
you pull 60 feet out of 600 feet. Something's going to give. There's going to be a weak spot in the wire.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But
One
it's
of my
that when,
posts.
when it gets rubbed against, it stretches and it
I see.
doesn't come back. So the wire that I use is a high tensile wire. It's a smaller gauge, but it's a higher tensile strength. So your low carbon wire is A36 steel essentially, which is 36,000 psi tensile strength. And the way I understand tensile strength, and this is super simplified version, if you take a bar of steel, of A36 steel, 1 inch square, and you put it in a machine and it pulls it apart, it's going to break at 36,000 pounds. The stuff that I use is around 160,000 pounds of tensile
wow.
strength.
Oh wow.
So it's a lot stronger. It doesn't give, it doesn't have the stretch to it. It stretches 1 to 2%.
So once it's done.
Yes.
That's it.
And then it's also wound different. It's wound like a spring because it's a high tensile steel. It's almost like a spring steel. It's wound. It's a continuous wind on the old low carbon wire, so the entire strand is wound the same direction. The stuff that I use, every 4 inches, it switches directions on the wind.
Oh, so it makes it stronger. And
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
So when it gets pulled, it untwists a little bit, but as long as you don't pull too much, it'll spring back.
Oh, okay.
So if you pull too much, say, a vehicle drives through it,
Right.
it happens. It'll go plastic in the section, which means it loses its elasticity and it won't go back, but it's still a decently strong fence at that point.
It's still intact.
It's still intact.
Wow.
This spring, when Kaiser Creek flooded, we all remember that.
Yes.
From what I can see on the length of Kaiser Creek, every water gap, every bridge, every culvert, pretty much on that whole stream blew out, with few exceptions. Right, the Rapalje Road being one, and the only water gap that I know was standing was the fence that I had built the year before. And I used this high tensile wire, and I go back there, and there's probably a pile of lumber, half the size of this room and 4 foot tall, pushed up against that fence.
Wow.
And it had held.
Wow, that is amazing.
And everything else was just gone. And I took a bunch of pictures of this, and I'm like, this is why we use the wire we do. This is why we spend the extra money on building fence the way we do, because when this happens, you're not quite as pressed. It's going to flood. It's going to take out fence. It's going to happen. But if half of your fence stays, you probably have half of your pasture versus no pasture, because you're trying to go out there and fix water gaps when the water's high and trying to get someplace for your cows to eat. Whereas if your fence doesn't fail, sure, my fence got pushed over and it don't look as good as it did the day I put it in, but it was still there. It's still...
Well, sometimes catching all that debris, you just saved your access to your property.
Yeah.
Because there's maybe a gravel culvert downstream that all that debris was going to go bind up on that. I mean, I'm not saying that's why you build it that way, but I just know that if it stops it from going downstream, that debris not going downstream is always good news.
It did probably save a couple of bridges.
Yeah.
And he did lose his culvert, but that was a wild storm where it was a new culvert. Probably if it had been an old culvert that had been there for half a year or for half a decade or something, it probably would have stayed. But it had been put in the year before, so it was still pretty soft around it. But it kept the culvert from going super far downstream or taking out the next bend or whatever.
Where we live, we are very familiar with everything you're talking about. We have a culvert. We have access that gets wiped out every 2-3 years, big time. And everybody's always like, why can't we just put something upstream a little ways to catch all the debris? And there's people that propose that and different things anyway. And everybody else is like, okay, well then once you stop all that debris, if you can, like where's it going to go from there? What else are we going to get? Anyway. Yeah, so I'm very familiar with these debris piles that you're talking about and the power of that and the power of that water. I've seen what it has done out there. We deal with it all the time.
Huge trees. You wouldn't think would come down this little meaningless creek that's
dry sometimes in places, and now there's a 60-foot tree coming down this thing.
Kaiser Creek was dry, and 2 years ago up until this flood is basically dry.
Yeah.
And it took out was Garrett Excavating's bridge to his house, and he never did find the bridge. It either obliterated or buried in a sandbar somewhere, but that bridge is gone.
Wow, I feel better. Not that I'm happy about his misfortune, but these are guys that you're throwing around names. I'm like, they know how to build culverts. They know how to build bridges. Well, I built a bridge for my dad several years ago over that very creek, and then bam, that water came down and just took that bridge out. Oh man, I built a beautiful bridge. I put a ton of work into that thing. It got taken out. He put in but that was after he had put in somebody else, an excavating company had come up there and put in a big old 8-foot culvert pipe that was 20 feet long and 8 feet high. And that got taken about a half mile downstream by one of those floods that came down through that and it was mostly a dry creek.
Yep.
And just amazing how all of a sudden there's no water in that creek. And now you look down there and that creek is 40 feet wide.
Rushing like a river,
Yeah.
We were driving home when it was raining when the Kaiser Creek flood happened, and it was raining like I'd never seen before, and I think they said it was 5 inches of rain in 15 or 20 minutes
Yeah.
up there, and there's nothing to slow that water down. They're actually pretty lucky that it was as small of an event as it was, because had it been 2 weeks later, it'd have been hill climb weekend, and that hill
People
climb
were-
property there'd have been 100 campers.
Oh yeah.
There'd have been 100 campers pushed up against the road, not just trees,
Yeah.
and people would have drowned.
Yeah.
Because people were camping in tents right on the creek bottom.
Yeah.
Oh,
Or,
wow.
like,
This was
yeah.
2 weeks later after it had just flooded, and then we got like 2 inches of rain that next weekend or something like that.
Remember, we were at the BFL and we didn't drive anywhere. We were just sitting there, and the whole thing was like a lake. Our whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we
Yeah.
go home. We're like, well, if we still have a bridge and can get home, a culvert. And then it wasn't too long after that it came rushing down, and we. Actually, my daughter had left to go pick up her brother for practice, came back, and it was gone. So we had to go around through fields, cow fields, and get home. But yeah, she had left, came back, and it was gone. She couldn't get back across.
So the crazy part about that rainstorm is we live 3 miles west of Rappelje Road. We barely got maybe half an inch.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
5 miles east, they got 5 inches.
That's
Isn't that
incredible.
wild?
That's wild to me, because
Yeah.
where I grew up in the Midwest, you don't get localized rain like that. If it's going to rain, it's going to rain everywhere.
Yeah, this whole area, it's not selective.
No.
Yeah.
It's very hit and miss. So where did you grow up at?
I grew up in Southwest Lower Michigan.
How'd you end up in Montana?
There was, at the time, there was Arrowhead Bible College at Beartooth Christian Camp,
Okay.
and that's actually where we met. We were out there for the year, and
Oh,
she was from Iowa, and that's what she tells everybody.
So
anyway.
neither one of you
or from Montana.
from Montana.
We try not to tell too many
This
people
is
that.
the
Maybe we shouldn't put that
longest-
in the podcast.
Hey, I get it. I just own it right away. I tell people I'm not from here originally, but I'm here to be a Montanan. I'm not here
Yep.
to change anything.
Right.
I'm here to.
This is the longest I've ever lived in one place before, though. So,
Me
Really?
too.
is in Montana. Yeah.
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 And you
Longest,
guys
I've
loved
lived
it enough
everywhere.
to stay.
longest you've
Yes.
lived in one house, correct?
One property, one
Yeah.
state. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
You're originally from Iowa.
I was born in Texas,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, I grew up mainly-ish in Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Actually, we used to live like I was in Chicago area in Indiana and lived like 2-3 hours away from him.
Okay.
All the growing
then
up
had
and
to
didn't
move,
know.
We both had to move to Montana to meet each other.
Yep.
Okay. So then you met at this event.
We met at Arrowhead Bible College,
Okay.
which was at the time a 1-year Bible college,
Okay.
and that's where we met and hit it off, and we've been pretty much together ever since.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And how long ago was that?
2008.
2008.
So
I moved here in 2007.
where did you move from?
Southern Nevada.
Southern
Nevada,
Nevada.
just outside of Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I was originally
Your
from
heart?
like the Las Vegas, Nevada, and Henderson area. And then, and then we moved to a town just outside of Vegas for like middle school and high school. And then, anyway, then life gets going and you go live other places and things. But then I found my way back there after the military, some things like that. But my kids were getting older, and I had one that was going to start heading, going to go to high school soon. And I don't know, it was important to me to get out of there for some reason. And I found this place on a map basically and just said, I'm going to, let's go move here. And we just came up here and bought a piece of property and moved up here right before my son started his freshman year. And my kids have just, they which is kind of scary because you're kind of like, okay, they're at this pivotal age. They got friends, they got cousins. And like most kids are going to be like, well, I don't want to leave my friends or I don't want to whatever. And I had a ton of family, both sides. That's where I was from. That's where my wife at the time, that's where she was from. Both of our families were all right there. So to pick out, just to tell everybody, hey, we're moving to Montana. And everybody was like, what? Anyway, came up here. All of my kids have later on said, we're just really glad you moved here. We liked our school. We liked our community. And we're thankful that we had this opportunity to kind of grow up here and learn this. All this is like a different culture up here versus where they had grown up. And anyway, so being told that, I'm like, oh, I hope I didn't damage my kids too much, give them something to talk to their therapist about. But
Yeah.
all of them have said that it was a positive thing to move here specifically. They were glad. especially after visiting other schools. They went to other communities and doing that in sports. They were traveling the state more than I was when we first moved up here. And so they would come back and say, I really like our community. I really like our school.
It's crazy up here, sports.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Sports are.
Now I'm like, I would, if I could, I would do homeschooling, honestly. The way the schools and life and world and everything is going, like I envy you that you can do that and you're in that position to be able to do that with your family. I think that's awesome.
It's a lot of work, mostly for her.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
And but like now, my youngest is a sophomore and he's in school. My oldest is graduated, and I have a senior graduating this year. You know, but even back when they were little, there wasn't all the tools they have now. And I think, you know, COVID really set that up to where now there's so much out there.
No.
There's not?
No, COVID kind of ruined it and
Really?
set people up for failure, in my opinion. But
Really?
yeah.
With the homeschooling?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because people were trying to do school at home
Okay.
instead of like doing what was best for their child and what they could mentally even accomplish and stuff, because they just put a lot of expectations on the parents during that time, I think. So,
What do our kids do? Probably 2 hours a day of school, give or take.
and then if there's some times where it's like, if we read a chapter, I was at one point right after COVID was working at Texas Roadhouse and 307 and at Lucky Lil's here in town, and it was like, if I can read a chapter of a book, I'm winning, like kind of thing. Like
right.
if we can just get through this day and stuff. But I've had people come up to me and be like, you know, they have a 4-year-old and they're just so worried about them not being able to read, and I'm like, they've been on this earth for 4 years. Give them time. It'll come, you know, and stuff. And
Right.
and so it's just,
I guess I thought what I was meaning is that like all the
Online resources.
the online resources
Yeah.
that are out there now seems to be more so than
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
online.
us, you know, years ago, us going, like when I went to high school, late 80s or early 90s, like, you know, there was kids that were homeschooled or whatever, but back then you really had to research to find, you know, resources or find groups or find community in that.
it was more looked down upon back then. Too.
For
Yeah.
sure, for
It really
sure.
was, yeah.
I think, though, it just appears to me, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about,
Yeah, maybe
that
so.
there is just more, there's at least more community.
Yeah.
And there's more, because of the internet, more resources of like, okay, like what I don't know in this area, we can cover in this area here,
For
or
sure.
we can, some of those things.
yeah.
But-
that's for sure.
But then you got a lot of weird things out there too, I feel like, where it's like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but like forest school, like, you know, you got some weird stuff popping up out there
Yeah.
too, where it's
I haven't
just like,
seen that.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
It's forest school.
Like
And
doing
it's like,
school in the forest.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I
everything
mean,
is really like,
is.
I don't know. It's kind of out there stuff. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. My daughter was telling me about it, that in her area where she lives in Vancouver, Washington, that there's a lot of things where people are putting their kids in forest school. And it's really kind of like, holy cow, I hope these kids are
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
going to be okay.
I mean, there's definitely like Charlotte Mason is big about getting like your kids outdoors and stuff.
Yeah,
and doing school,
which is
outdoors.
healthy.
Yes, that is. But I don't think that's forest school. That's something different.
Yeah. I could keep going on it probably of what my interpretation of
Yeah.
what she said was, but I don't want to sit here and say a bunch of stuff that isn't true. But it sounded like, I don't know. It didn't sound very structured. It didn't sound very, not that things have to be structured. I'm saying that, I don't know. It just sounded very made up. Like, it sounds like people are just getting like woo-woo out there with this stuff and not, what's that?
I said, if you can teach your kid, and I heard this, is if you can teach your kid how to read, how to do basic math, and how to learn, that's all they need to know.
I agree.
100%.
And,
That's
everything
the
everything
major-
else,
How to think.
how to
Yep.
think, everything else they can learn.
Yep. Reading alone. If you can
Yep.
teach them to read, then the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
If you can read, you can learn. And
Well,
Right.
immediately when you said our kids go to school, like do school like 2 hours a day, I was like, that sounds about right. Like that's really all you need. Like when you
That's all
think
they
of all
really
of the other junk, the filler
oh, so
of that
much
is in our kids' lives, you know, like there's so much filler.
unneeded.
Well, like for example, this fall when we went to Indiana for the fence deal, I took the family along because they're not in school. We can do this,
that.
and school was learning how to fence a little bit.
Which is
That's
what our
awesome.
son wants to do anyway.
And
At
culture
school isn't
and
going to teach
different-
him
Yeah.
that, you know.
No, he'll like grow up knowing a trade.
Yeah.
You know, and knowing the math, that probably better math because it's actually applied math.
Yep.
You know, some things like that, some different things about physics that kids don't really, you know.
get when you're looking at a paper and you're not really getting why this drawing's this
Yeah.
way.
Why is this applicable to my life? Well, you know, all of a sudden it's applicable now because, you know, I got to know how to find square if I'm building a square pen, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to know, you know, how much force is this brace going to take in this soil, which is the only way you can really learn that is to do it.
Yeah.
But learning the physics of it really helps to help keep that post keep them posts staying in the ground and keep the wire tight. It's just the stuff I didn't know that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Have you guys always homeschooled from the very beginning?
Yep.
Yep.
Nice.
Oh,
Before it
that's
was
awesome.
cool, as I like to say.
Before it was
Yeah,
all cool.
Before it was cool.
That's a T-shirt.
I homeschooled before it was cool.
We thought
That
about
is-
trying to put him in Rapplejay, or I did at one point, just the small town school,
Yeah.
but pretty well not going to do that.
Yeah.
Just we like the idea of the small school, and
Yeah.
if he were to school, it'd be a small school like that.
Right.
Um,
I go on a big rant all the time with April. I'm always like, if I don't know, if I was coming out of college with a teaching degree, I'm like, I would get 10 kids together. I would let people know, like, hey, here's the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna, like, you know, like not everybody has the time to homeschool.
Yeah.
You know, they want that, and they want that, you know, just a better experience for their kids. But I've always thought, like, if I was a young teacher, I would just go do that. I would say, hey, I'm going to make this everything transparent. I'm going to do this curriculum, and I'm going to take 10 kids from this grade to this grade, and they're going to get this experience. We're going to do gardening. We're going to cook lunch together. We're going to, you know, we're going to set the table every day together. We're going to like, you know, some of all those things. We're going to, you know what? We're going to do fishing. We're going to do this. You know, it would be almost a mix of like school and Boy Scouts and
Yeah.
you know, a few things like that. And like I
Lessons.
go on these things, I'm like, oh, there's so many resources, because if you don't have the background and everything else, like now with the internet, you can bring in a big screen of somebody who's a guest who's bringing in, you know, things. I don't know. Anyway, I go off on these rants about this because I hear the things going on in schools, or I see the things going on in schools around the country, and I see this, that I feel like it's going back toward that, where people are getting fed up with some of the bureaucracy and some of the nonsense of it all, and I think that it's going to create a marketplace for that.
Yep.
Well,
I
there's
think-
something that you said too a lot, was the word together. And that's the other thing too, is I would miss my kids like crazy. Like if they had to go to school for 7 hours a day? Is it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
9
Like,
hours a day by
9
the time you figure
hours?
the time on the bus.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Like
And
no,
you're
I
not
couldn't
in
do it.
control of, my thing is like now we're too far down that road, but you're not in control of what your kid's learning and all the stuff that they're pushing on kids and stuff that they're your kid. You should have a say in that, and you don't.
Yeah.
And so that's the really scary part about it.
This is just my perception of people and things in the world and everything, but I think that, in my opinion, you would be the like, again, now all of a sudden I lost the word for it, but like I would think that there's more moms that are like, I can't wait till my kids just go to school all day today so I don't have to deal with them. Like I feel like there's a lot of that out there, where it's like
Yeah.
they don't want that responsibility, and like good riddance. Like they're not even really trying to be parents. I'm like, it just seems like that's a thing. I also see I pay attention to like a lot of the stuff that's going on in schools, the stuff that teachers have to put up with, and I actually have a brother who's been in who was in school administration in one of the largest school districts in the U.S. and hearing their stories about parents and about the type of things they deal with at schools, like parents not taking responsibility for really anything. Like you think like, oh, the problem is, you know, the kid. Well, it's not really the kid is not really the problem. It's the lack of support from the parent or the this or the that. And it just seems like a lot of parents aren't even taking that role of a parent very serious, or that responsibility
Letting
of
the
like
school raise their kids.
Yeah.
letting school
Yeah.
raise their kids.
Sports,
And like
school, everybody else coaches.
Yeah, like let's just keep them in sports. Let's keep them in this. So I'll let school and coaches raise my kids. Anyway, that's my little beef about that.
And now social media.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like there's some kids that come from really bad home environments, so having a coach or the teachers that
There
can
is
be
that.
a very positive thing too.
Yeah,
so
there is that.
it's just an ugly world sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is a it is a respectable thing to put that time in with your kids and take that time to teach them, and that's a lot of responsibility. But I think
Very
they'd be better off for it. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's awesome. Though you were saying, was it your son that was like he's all interested in fencing?
Yeah, and he has me really excited too because he can do math problems in his head, and it drives me nuts. Because like with teaching him, I'm like, I don't know how you got this answer. Like, can you just
Show me.
Yes, and then
Show your work.
Yeah,
He
but
can't,
he
can he?
doesn't. No, he really can't. If I try to actually like do math like my way and like write it out for him, he'll write it completely different, or like it'll confuse him and stuff. And so learning that, but he can just do it in his head.
How old
he just
is he?
does it in his head. 10.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yep. And he's further in it than in math than my 12-year-old daughter, but then she's also further in English than him, like reading
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yep.
But she didn't start reading until she was about 9.
Wow.
Like we just started reading aloud together as family, and that was what triggered finally, because I was like going to my other homeschool moms going like, what am I doing wrong? What else can I do?
Some kids just learn differently.
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
just have their own pace, and it was finally just igniting that passion in her to want to learn and wanting to read and not making it such a chore and stuff, and such a like, let's sit down and
My
do our
son struggled
things.
with reading really bad, and it took the right teacher to be like, he learns differently and backwards and opposite. And then once she changed up how he totally caught on just like that. It was pretty amazing. Yeah.
I struggled to read aloud when I was in school. Like I got put it with the slow readers, and it drove me up the wall because I'm reading the whole page and they're up at the top, and I'm like down and ready to read the next page in my mind. It all makes perfect sense in my mind, but we're still at the top of the page because I would talk and my mouth would get confused and the
he'll skip lines.
brain
He'll be
Because his
3
brain's
lines down.
moving faster
He
than his
drives me
mouth.
nuts when we are reading out loud or something, or like reading the Bible together, and I'll be like, you just skipped like 3 lines, and he's like, well, because he was down there in his head.
Yep.
But he was still like, his mouth hadn't caught up.
His mouse on autopilot, still
His
back
brain's
there.
going.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, like with kids, about how you think you raise them all the same or they're exposed to the same things, but then those different things come out in them where they're like, oh, this person they're not all the same. Like, this is what's coming out. This is a strength here, or this is a weakness here. Like finding those out as your kids get older and they develop, you're like, okay. So I thought it was like the same with everybody, or they were exposed to the same things. But it's so interesting how different personalities, and I don't know, they're all different, and you can't control that, and then you just got to adapt and embrace whatever. So,
But then didn't they put, like the school put you in like more of a
Advanced.
like a special class, like a slower class,
a slower class for slower readers.
because they didn't understand.
well, then
how
you're
his brain
categorized
worked.
as this when you're like,
Yeah.
maybe that's not what the issue is. Like,
So we'd be reading along. We'd have the reading assignment class. The fast readers and the medium readers would get it all done in school, and the slow readers would have to take it home. Well, I'd have it read to myself by the time I got back to my desk.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, but it frustrated me to no end because I was categorized as a slow reader because I couldn't read out loud. But in my mind, I can just fly.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
That's
I get it.
interesting.
Yeah, my son, he's my oldest, and I was concerned about him. He just was slow to speak about things, and I was concerned. I went to my brother, and I was like, he was I think he was assistant principal, or maybe he was just an elementary school teacher at that time. I was like, you ask him a question, and he just it's like he takes a long time to speak. He takes a long time to whatever. I was always like overthinking it too much. He was like, yeah, but the words he's using, like he's okay. Don't go put him. They're going to categorize him, and once they do that, then he's in the system and he's categorized as that. Don't worry about this. Like, he just takes time to think things through, and he's very meticulous about this.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
Ellen. Yeah.
so but early on, when it's your first kid, you're trying to analyze every little thing they do, and you're trying to anticipate or see red flags.
Yeah, us girls aren't really like that. We're just like, bleh.
Yeah. And then, I mean, he's super
My girls.
intelligent. He's just a super intelligent guy. And he grows up and he's a super intelligent guy. Anyway, but at that age, like 5 years old, I was like,
But I think that's what's wrong in the school system too, is everybody wants everybody to be at the same level and doing the same thing instead of looking at each person as an individual and how they learn and
Yeah.
what you can do. And that's humans, but it's the whole federal school system of where they have to have this much, they have to do these test scores or they don't get funding. And so these teachers the creativity in teaching has went away. They can't be creative. They have to follow this rule.
Yep.
Talking about the book thing and the reading thing, though, I thought this was interesting. We were talking the other day, and you were telling me about how there's just really no standard of fencing out there. And there was actually a book. There's a book coming out. You helped on this book. Tell me about this book, because I was trying to explain it to April the other day. And I was talking about the ASTM standards and some things like that, but that there wasn't actually a set of standards. I figured, honestly, I moved to Montana, and I just figured that up here, fencing is in everybody's blood. Yeah, they're
It's
just
like the Wild
born.
West.
Yeah.
And
Everyone's
I thought, you just go to the hardware store and it's in their blood. Everybody knows what they're doing.
Yep.
So almost anybody can build a fence, right?
Right.
yeah.
We've all done it. We've all built a fence, and especially a barbed wire fence. If you live on acreage, you probably have built or maintained fence. Yeah. The trouble comes when you get into something that you don't know. I look at, for example, if you're driving Highway 10 across some Special K Ranch by one of the irrigation ditches, there's these massive, they're probably 10-inch pipes, and they're kicked out of the ground. Not because they were set wrong, per se, but because the wire's attached wrong. And you wouldn't know it unless you know it. So this book we're trying to work through is a very basic guide to how to build a correct fence. Now, the caveat is fencing standard is impossible to, you can't say put the post 4 foot deep and that's going to work in every single soil condition. Because at my house, a typical person's going to struggle to get a post 4 feet in the ground. 3 feet in the ground is a struggle sometimes.
Oh, you got bedrock right there?
I got bedrock right there.
Okay.
He tried putting a post up at our top gate, and he had a jackhammer, and it wouldn't even, you couldn't jackhammer it. It wouldn't drill, it wouldn't do anything. And and then the county came up to put a cattle guard in, and now our cattle guard sits much higher than the rest of the road because they couldn't dig it either up there. So they had to build up to it.
But I ended up driving a post through that bedrock. I remember it took an hour and a half to drive this pipe 4 feet deep.
One post.
Oh, wow. And it was going a 1/16 of an inch a hit. Well, I went to pull it a few years later when the county told me I needed to take the gate out because it was technically on a county road. And it always had been a gate, and I put a swinging gate in there to improve my access so she didn't have to, we had an operator on it, so she could just push a button.
Right.
Anybody else could just pop the pin and open the gate. Well, they didn't like that, and so we had to take it all out, and they had to put in a cattle guard. I went up there to pull that post because it's a good post. I want to keep my post, right? I have a 3.5-yard-old payloader, and I could not pull that post out of the ground. It took me probably 30 minutes, and I finally ended up breaking the post off below grade.
Wow.
And
It's wedged in there.
Yeah,
in that,
it's
in that
part
bedrock.
of the rock.
It is fused.
I'm pretty sure it's still under that cattle guard.
Yeah.
But if you were to set that same post in, say, down on the Yellowstone River bottom where it's floodplain half the year and the water table 6 inches deep, I could bear hug that post and pull it out of the ground at the same depth.
Yeah.
So the standard is you have to set it to what your soil conditions allow to a certain amount of pull, resistance to pull, basically.
Yeah.
And what me and several other guys were trying to do is just write a standard that wasn't confusing, that was consistent, but most of all was consistent with the good materials that we have available. There's how-to guides for fencing all over. Every wired manufacturer who sells to the general public has a how-to guide.
Right.
But they're all basically the same, and they're all the same poor advice because it's the way we've always done it.
Taught by Grandpa.
Taught by Grandpa. You know, in the fencing industry, there's a saying, you know, build the fence like Grandpa did, or make Grandpa proud when you build the fence. And, you know, fence like Grandpa did, which is great. Grandpa used the best things that he had available at the time.
Yep.
Which fencing like Grandpa did today means use the same material Grandpa did. You know, used railroad ties, which, you know, there's a reason the railroad pulled that tie out of the ground, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled it off the track because it's no longer suitable for its purpose and it's starting to rot. But it's a great fence post, right? Wrong. They're hard to work with. They're nasty. There's some nasty chemicals on them.
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't get me wrong. They have their place. They do work. But there's so much better materials out there. You know, I'm a big fan of steel pipe.
Mm-hmm.
I say this, feel a little hypocritical saying this, but I use a lot of used drill pipe from the oil fields.
Okay.
I like it because in our climate, it just doesn't rust. You know, nothing rusts here per se. It takes forever to rust. But down there on this ranch I'm working on now, I got a couple posts where I drove it 4 foot deep and there was no resistance. So I drove the 8 foot post all the way to ground, and I welded another 8 footer on top and drove that to where it was 4 foot tall. So I got 12 foot of post in the ground before I had resistance that I felt was actually going to keep that post in the ground, keep it straight.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Wow.
So what we're trying to do, and all that to say, is you can't do that if you don't know how much pull you need. You know, if you just set it in the ground and throw some dirt back in the hole, you're going to have a fence that's loose.
Yeah.
And a lot of people put their wire too loose. So the brace holds is saying any brace will hold if the wire's loose enough. And a lot of braces hold because the wire's loose, but then you have problems with the wire getting spread apart and the calves walking right through. Where's that wire? Antelope, whatever. We get that wire tight and they won't even challenge that fence because they know they can't get through it after if they're a smart enough animal. Some animals are fence you know, no matter what fence you got, they're going to challenge it. They're going to try and jump it. And the best thing to do with those is to eat them. And I'm serious. Eat them or sell them or don't have them on your place because they're just not worth it. You know, they're probably hard-headed. They're probably a dangerous one. They may throw a good calf, sure. But what's that good calf worth when she decides to break your leg out when you're trying to check calves in the spring?
Yeah.
True.
And
teach them a lesson.
But it's hard to. It's one of those industries. It's just, you know, everybody's done it so long, the same way for so long. You try and do something new, and they're like, that's never going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say new, I mean it's new here.
Yeah.
In these other countries, back to the fence network community, these other countries, they've been doing it this way for years, decades. I think I've never actually seen a hard copy of it, but I want to say the New Zealand Fence Standard is like 300 pages.
Wow.
Of text and pictures, and they go to school to do this. Like you apprentice. It's like a 3 or 4 year apprenticeship, if I remember correctly.
Wow, that's
to
amazing.
Become a master fencer or whatever they call it.
And none of that exists here, right?
None of that exists here. It's
the Wild West.
It's the Wild West. It's chucking a truck, as we call it, you know.
Chucking a truck.
Go down to the hardware store, get a pair of diggers and a rock bar, and you're in business.
Yeah, because they look at it like, oh, it's just a fence.
It's just a fence.
Yes, it's just a fence, and just a fence. You know, I've mentioned is one of those deals that you hear all the time is a mile of fence should cost $10,000. There was a guy last year.
I agree.
There was a guy last year I saw on Facebook who was advertising a mile of fence for $6,000.
Oh man,
I have not seen his single ad for him in almost a year now. Which tells my cost to build a mile of fence, my material cost is roughly $6,000.
Yeah.
And then your time.
And then so he's giving fence away basically, he's losing money on it. So I don't know that he's in business anymore.
Yeah. I'm like, if you have a mile to fence, like it
you can afford.
You should be able to afford good fence. Like that's where I'm like, that's why I'm laughing because I'm like a mile of fence. A mile is a long way of fence.
Mm-hmm.
Like
a mile is
big ranch.
20 acres square.
Yeah.
Is 4,000 feet.
Yeah.
So almost what 4/5 of a mile is a square 20 acre piece.
it's going to cost me 10 grand to put gravel on my driveway. That's 1,000 feet, you know,
Yep.
like,
Yeah. Well, and then that's not time, all those hours. And
that's why I'm
then
like,
if you're breaking fence and all that, so that's more money and
Yeah.
time.
yeah.
But at $10,000, you know, sure you can do it yourself for that.
Yeah.
But what's your time worth?
What's your time worth?
What's the
Exactly.
equipment you got to have and the time you spend for a less quality fence than hiring it out?
Yeah.
And one thing that I try and educate people on is a good fence that doesn't need maintenance. I would say 80% of the fences here in Stillwater County are at or beyond their service life. They
Yeah.
should be replaced. And we just keep milking them along another year, maybe next year the calf market will be higher and we'll have some money to spend, to the point where you're spending hours, weeks even, all summer long fixing fence ahead of your cows as you move them. If you didn't have to do that, what could you do with your life? If you spent 10 weeks a summer and you spent 4 hours a week fixing fence, if you got that time back,
Yeah.
that's a 40-hour week. That's a vacation. That's going away for the weekend with your family and kids to the lake. But instead we choose to milk this old fence along. I understand sometimes there's, you know, financial reasons for having to milk it along.
Right.
But we spend so much time on a bad product that we're going to have to replace anyway that we should just...
You spend more money.
You spend more... You're tripping over a dollar to pick up a
Right.
dime when, you know, the most valuable thing I think we have is time.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. Our time is our most valuable asset we have. We don't. Once it's gone, it's gone. There's no getting it back. You can get money back. You can have more kids. As bad as that sounds, you can have more kids. You
For some of
you can have a second marriage.
Yeah.
You can't get your time back.
Right.
No.
And to me, just spending your time wisely and not throwing money after the way we've always done it and repairing this old junk
Yeah.
that you're going to spend more money on. That
Well, the thing I think about too in a lot of different businesses and a lot of things is that people, and I'm wondering about and this. So now I want to ask you, because before I just start, I always like to just make up statistics, right? So, like a good fence on a property, though. I mean, how much does a good fence, or like, because I see them all the time. We have fence lines that we go on the way out to our house, and like everything's just pieced together and just. I mean, posts sagging all over the place. I mean, it just kind of looks junky and whatever. How much does that affect property values when people are talking about? Like,
I'm gonna go buy a piece of property, but I'm gonna have to redo that whole fence. You know,
I wouldn't. I don't know off the top of my head.
right, but
I know
it's
I
a
would-
factor.
I know
wouldn't you
if I
say?
was buying a property
Yeah,
and it had a brand new fence,
or one that's old but that was put in right the first time. That like it's got a life left in it. Like it's gonna have more life.
a fence that has life left onto it is
It's worth something.
it's worth something. It's worth, you know, if you got to go spend, if you buy a section of land and all 4 fences are trash and you need 4 fences on it, 4 miles of fence, and you got to spend, you know, we'll say it's a flat ground and you've got to spend $100,000 on fence, hypothetically. Not real numbers, by the way. I'm
Yeah, just throwing it out.
throwing
Right.
out there that you're spending this much money on fence right away, or you can go buy a section somewhere else, same water, same grass, same, but it doesn't need $100,000 in fence right away. It's a no-brainer to go buy the better property with the better fence, assuming it is, you know, piece for piece. You know.
Right, exactly. And that's where I'm saying, like, that's what most people don't think about. It's
Yeah.
not the cost of, like, oh, the materials. It's not always just the cost of the materials and the labor or somebody's time, but it's added value. Like,
Yep.
sometimes the added value of having something done right in, like, in so many businesses, if you can get somebody to do it right for you, the added value, the built-in equity, the down the road value that's going to give to you, like, people don't realize that. Like, that's why it's worth it to do it right.
It's always quality over quantity.
Yep. And that's my business motto is build less fence that's better, so that I'm not out there chasing, you know, you can go broke selling all the fence you want. If you're not selling at a good profit,
Yeah.
you're going to go broke, you know, and you're going to work hard doing it.
Yep.
If you're going to go broke, you might as well sit at home in your easy chair or go fishing.
Yeah, right.
But I look at fence, and really every asset we look at should be a cost per year. So if I can get a fence that's going to last 20 years, and it's 10 grand,
Yeah. What's your cost per year? Yeah.
it's $500 a year. If I can get a fence that's 15 grand, but it lasts twice as long, so I said 20 the first time, we'll say 40 the second time, $250 a year. It's a bigger upfront cost,
right.
but over the life, everything we look at everything up front. We really need to look at that backside, and that's really where it's.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Where it's a saving is where you're saving time is saving money is. What's this fence going to cost me over the life of the fence? If the fence lasts 10, 15 years longer, is it cheaper to go with the cheaper product the first time? Yes, it's cheaper on the front side, and sometimes we all have to do that. We have to make that sacrifice of not buying the good quality tool. If I need a tool that I'm going to use once or twice, and I'm probably never going to use it again, I'm not going to the Snap-on truck. Yeah. I'm going to the Harbor Freight.
Right.
Yeah.
Or something I'm going to lose or expect to lose, I go to Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
But if it's a tool that I expect to use every day, day in and day out, man, I'm buying the better tool because it's just easier.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And as I know we're just talking fencing, right. This is I guess it's the word, right? Parables for me. Like in my mind, I'm applying it to all kinds of things. Like it's just
life.
simple. It's business. It's so many things that we've learned,
running a business.
In business, some of those concepts that when I just worked for somebody else, so many of these concepts that you're just talking about, these are just business concepts, and I never thought about them. Most people don't think about them. And like everything you're talking about, like, I'm applying that to our experiences that we've had in business.
100%.
And it's just all similar. And so anyway, it's just, there's so many of those things that are just relate to so many situations on there, but so many people don't think about it that way. They don't approach things
or they just don't know.
And also, I also look at it with the job that I have. You're sometimes out in the middle of nowhere. You're the only one around. Sometimes you're out of cell service. Mm-hmm. Safety is important.
Yeah.
So if I can spend a little bit more money on the tool and it's a lot safer, it's worth worth coming home every night. I tell people my number one priority in my job is for me and my help to get home every night.
Yeah.
Number 2 is quality, and number 3 is production. And if you do that, you're not going to get as much done because you're thinking about that safety factor, And sometimes I'm not careful enough. Sometimes mistakes happen. My wife's chuckling over here. But,
gotten better.
I've gotten a lot better.
Getting older.
I'm getting older and wiser, and I don't heal as fast.
Yeah.
But, on the same aspect, a good fence is also safer for your cows because they're not going to get a loose fence is... Whenever you see a deer, everybody's seen that picture of the deer tangled up in the barbed wire fence, right? Mm-hmm. That's an old loose fence every time. You don't see them tangled up in a new tight fence.
Yeah.
Because it just like your shoelaces, they get tangled up when they're loose. They don't get tangled up when they're tight and tied.
Yeah. No, it's very true.
So you have to. The more you spend, I hate to say it, but the more you spend, the better you build, the safer your product is for yourself, for you, for your livestock, and it's an investment is what it really boils down to. Is if that cow doesn't break its leg in a fence because the fence is still tight 10 years down the road,
it's worth it.
That's worth a fair bit of money.
Yeah.
If those cows don't get out and get on the highway and get hit.
Right. Which does that? I mean, what kind of liability does that open up to somebody when their cow gets on the road and somebody hits it?
Montana's open range, I believe, so it's the driver's fault. From what
is it the driver's fault?
Yeah, from what I know, Montana is an open range state.
Fence out.
And so if they get out, that it's not.
Yeah.
It's
even
the
so, I'd be like, holy cow.
I believe. Don't quote me.
I'm not 100% sure. Some of the fence law in Montana is. I'm a fence contractor and I have been for almost 10 years now, and it's still confusing to me.
You're like, I've been doing this now.
It's just crazy. Like, it's not very specific. Like, you see some other states, and they have this very specific law that a fence is this, minimum fence is this. We have that, but our standard is so far in the toilet for what a minimum fence is that it wouldn't turn most cows unless they didn't have legs.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's probably because what? They just put all this stuff into place years and years ago. They haven't adapted.
Yeah.
They haven't updated any of that.
A lot of it is, yeah. And, speed limits were slower back,
Yeah.
before reasonable and prudent, speed limits were 55.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, even though the cars are safer now, you weren't going as fast, so the accident wasn't as bad. And you had more time to stop and see what's going on when you're going slower.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the actual rule is as far as if your cows get out and get on the road. I'm just thinking, you're lost because your cow you have to put your cow down because a truck hit it.
Yeah, and you don't want to see anybody hurt out there anyway. Like, you're like, oh, geez. Like,
my cow got out and somebody,
I lost
got
property.
killed
Somebody else got killed. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bad day for everybody all the way around. Mm-hmm. What do you guys do when you're not doing work, when you're not, like, what do you guys look forward to doing on your downtime or your off time? What is it?
Yeah, lately, by lately, I mean quite a while, we've been building a house.
Oh, that's good downtime right there.
Yeah, it's real good downtime. But we're building off grid, so we could not get a construction loan.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so we're building out of pocket as we can afford
as
it.
You can.
Mm-hmm.
And
I went.
Hey,
to
you're still
40
married,
different banks. Yeah.
Right? Like this, you're either gonna make it and be stronger, or you're.
Why is that? Why can you not get
apparently
a loan?
in like even the 90s, if you had a cistern,
a cistern, you had to
couldn't
haul
get
your
a-
own water.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a loan
You
up
couldn't
until
get a
probably
loan.
10 years ago.
Wow.
It's the off-grid loan. It's up until probably 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the systems and setups maybe 15 years ago were so janky that the banks, they weren't worth loaning
Because
money
they didn't
for.
know what they were actually building and loaning that money
Yeah.
for. So if
Yeah.
there was actual equity or
Yeah.
That's what the tinfoil hat off. The other tinfoil hat on is they don't want you to be
Off-grid.
self-sufficient.
Yeah.
yeah.
There is a bank, from what I understand, in somewhere in Deer Lodge, I think it is, that they loan for off-grid homes. So it's coming to where we'll be able to,
Yeah.
but it's still a long ways off to become
wow.
mainstream.
Yeah.
But no, building a house, we love to help people too.
We volunteer a lot.
Volunteer at the church, volunteer with her campaign in Billings.
at
What's
the
your
Bitches.
campaign?
Her campaign?
Yeah.
It is a safe home for survivors of human sex trafficking right there in Billings.
Started in 2000.
This is their 7th year going. Yeah.
2016.
And just a sweet couple had the heart to start this ministry, and I just saw today they've taken in over 200 short-term survivors over the last year from all over the country. And they have a safe home where they can go and kind of get a reset on their life, if you will, if they're willing to put in the work. And we help out with events with them or projects that they have going on, all this other stuff that, we just got connected through this family, and they've become instant best friends almost. And
So what is it called again? Say the name of it.
it's the Her campaign.
The Her campaign.
Yes.
Okay. Never heard. I hadn't heard of that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's a great organization right in
They
Billings.
have the Run for Her every year. Also.
I've heard
You've
of like
Run
that.
for
Yeah.
Her?
I guess I didn't know what
Yep.
it was, but I have heard
Yeah. It's there.
But no, it's just it's an organization that's very near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
So we spend as much of our spare time as we can helping out with whatever we can and wherever we can or whatever. And
They actually have a thing coming up soon.
Yep.
A fundraiser.
Fundraiser will
Coming
be
up.
out. Will be
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. banquet.
In that case,
Is it before the holidays
It's
then?
after. It's
After?
Giving Tuesday.
Oh.
Our other thing with last year when the Yellowstone, or 2 years ago when the Yellowstone flooded, was it now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had a ton of work lined out.
Isn't that went by fast?
Yes.
I can't believe that was
2
that.
years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, go
But
ahead.
I had a ton of work lined out, and I just happened to get on Facebook one morning or one afternoon, and it's like this older gentleman needs help sandbagging his home, so that try and save his house, try and save his possessions. Well, we run down there and we help start moving sandbags, and then we start filling sandbags, and they're delivering out to all these places, but they're using like this S10 pre-runner style pickup and a little utility trailer, and they're hauling
sandbags.
hauling
Jeez.
30 or 40 sandbags at a time, and that's all they can do.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there with this 5500 dually pickup with an 11-foot bed, and I was like, just throw them on there, don't mind the mule. And we put like 300 sandbags on that truck and drove them over to Reed Point.
Wow.
I'm
And-
a professional sandbagger. Use it
Yeah.
with military. That's what I did.
Really?
Yep. She sandbagged in one of the Mississippi floods.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh wait. Yeah.
Yep.
In 08.
Yeah. The flood of 08.
Wow.
But just that week, I basically got no work done because I just kind of floated around helping people out as needed and cleaning up and
Wow.
whatnot. And it just warms my heart to be able to volunteer for meet a need in our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
No, that is awesome. It is. It's a good feeling to be a part of this community and to be able to do those little things and help out
Yeah.
in different ways. So, no, I get it. I can't believe that was that long ago, or
I guess it was, I guess it was maybe only a year and a half
year and a
ago.
half ago. Because once we get through this next spring, because it was in the spring runoff, right?
Yeah.
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 And during that storm, one of the rivers that flooded, of course, was the Rosebud Creeks.
Okay. Yeah.
And the year before that, I had put in a fence for this house, and the fence was 20 feet off the Rosebud Creek. And for about 2 weeks afterward, I was dreading it was the worst digging I had ever encountered. It was all river rock, 6-inch diameter and up river rock, no sand, no fines, no dirt. It took me 3 weeks to dig 40 post holes.
Oh my gosh,
And I ended up having to do it all by hand because I just couldn't get an auger to work.
that's a labor of love right there.
Yeah,
And-
just-
Well, the fence washed out. And I kind of figured it had, and I was just dreading this guy's phone call to, because I knew his fence was gone, to come fix it. And I get out there and I see it's gone. But during that year since I had done the fence the first time, I had built TrackMader, which is a machine, absolute machine when it comes to hard conditions. So it took me 3 weeks to dig the first time by hand. Took me 3 days of easy work
Running levers.
running levers.
That's awesome.
So
a whole different experience.
whole different experience. The first time I come home, I was just dead every night. I was ready to quit.
Sore.
Sore, tired. And the second time coming home, it's like I use this machine and I put in a 1/4 mile of fence post, and I'm like, I feel lazy. Which is a good thing because,
It saves his back. And
Saves my-
Yeah,
Yeah.
save your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, man, doing it that way is like, you don't
And just
wanna
all
be
that
breaking
time
yourself.
now, you have a
Yeah.
fence completed than what it took you
Which
to.
with building a house, because he does all that.
Yeah,
Like
you got-
we've
if you-
had a few things that he's had to get more professionals on and stuff, but he does all that. So now he has the energy to come home and actually do that
Yeah.
because of TrackMader and
That's
different things, so-
amazing. That's super. That's
Yeah,
something to be
no, I
proud of.
get it. To be able to go home and like have some energy to do other things and still have a life and not be like broken and
Yeah.
Be with
like
the
your kids are like,
yeah.
hey, like, like let's do something, and you're like,
Oh, I can't move because my
Well,
back hurts.
Yeah, was it last fall? Even with the new machine, I was starting to get burned out. Josie can attest this. I was getting pretty burned out on building fence. I'd been doing it by myself for years. But in 8 years, I've been doing it solo. I was burned out, and the trouble with fence is it's awful hard to do in the winter, and in bad winters especially even worse. And so, on a whim, I jokingly almost applied with the highway department MDT to plow snow for the winter. Well, they were desperate for help, so they took me.
really?
Yep. So last winter, I went and I worked for somebody else for the first time in 8 years, plowing snow, 40 hours a week or so, or more. And after that experience, I was so recharged and I was ready to take on fencing again and have new excitement for it because I went and did something else because I was so burned out.
Yeah.
And I've helped this year, and that really helps.
Oh wow.
And I've learned how to price the product a little bit better to make a better profit margin, so that helps.
Yeah.
But just doing something else for 4 or 5 months, I'll be back again this year in a couple of weeks to go.
Just
do
got a
that.
whole different perspective.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, I'm back.
Because I don't have to sit there. I'm not sitting there watching the bank account get small to smaller.
Yeah.
during the winter. Just sitting there and can't do anything in the house because I don't have any money. Can't go anywhere because I don't have any money. So I applied for this job and I got it, and it was, I hate to say it was almost life-changing, but it was.
Well, you would, I don't know if you mind me saying this, but you would get depressed. You were
Absolutely.
He fights that, and stuff. And so in the wintertime, it was just nice seeing that he wasn't so.
No, I
down
get
to
it.
that
Yeah.
and
Before
stuff.
that, every winter beforehand, I would get up at like 9. I'd take a 2-hour nap in the afternoon and go to bed at 9. I was just depressed.
Yeah.
Well, and seasonal depression is huge up
Already.
here.
Seasonal
Yeah.
depression plus
Not having feeling like you have purpose, or feeling
Yeah.
like, okay, we're in a position where, I get it, man. Like where you're feeling like, okay, we're limited. It's not just regular downtime. You're not able to go do work on the house or do the other things because we got to watch funds. That can get depressing. You're
Yep.
just like,
Yeah.
I'm in a spot.
Yep. And
So-
I just sit there and watch YouTube all day because it was the only thing I could do that I could afford.
Yeah. No, I get it.
And doing this, it was the first year in probably 6 years that I had work through the winter, and I also didn't fight the depression through the winter.
And
Wow.
I tried encouraging him like almost every winter. I'm like, honey, nothing's really changed. We need to go out and stuff. And then he just I think he kind of felt like he had failed his business because he also wanted to build like calf shelters, and he had all these other, I'd say, unrealistic expectations on himself.
Yeah.
You
Yep. You have
and
all
he
these
just
things
really
and you
needed
couldn't.
a break.
Yeah.
Just taking that break from fencing really made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And then also it was something that he can walk away from. It's not his problem. Like, yes, it is stressful to be out there plowing snow,
But
and
that's
stuff.
not your problem when you leave.
Exactly. Like he can leave it there.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I got to
Yeah.
go home and fix this broken tractor or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Or I got to fix this plow, or I got to fix, this before
Yeah.
work tomorrow because
You're
I got to
like,
plow
whoop.
snow,
Yeah.
and I'm the guy. Like,
Yep.
I would imagine they send that to the maintenance department when
Yep.
there's something
Send it off
breaks.
to maintenance guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you
So-
doing it again this winter?
I'm start again Monday after Thanksgiving.
Nice.
So, the other reason you do it is it's like one of the few well-paying seasonal winter jobs
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you're not like you go work at Ace Hardware for $15 an hour, which
Yeah.
you got to have an 8-hour shift to cover your gas practically to get to and from work.
Right.
Whereas this is quite a bit better.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, is it set hours or is it on call?
it's set hours. It's 40 hours a week plus on call.
Oh, okay.
So my last week with the state, it was that big old snowstorm we got.
Yeah.
That Red Lodge got like.
We couldn't go skiing because there was too much snow.
Yeah, you couldn't go skiing because Red Lodge had like 47
Didn't
inches of snow in town.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
And I got 60-some hours, 70 hours that last week. It was a half week on the paycheck, and it was a full week pay, full check's pay.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
But I went down to Red Lodge. This was something else, totally rabbit trail. But you've seen Red Lodge, and they get all that snow piled up, and you got to haul it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
After that storm, there was 30 or 40 dump trucks hauling snow from Red Lodge to the fairgrounds from 6 a.m. until 2:30 in the afternoon, just constant.
Yeah.
Just making that loop, just hauling snow out of town. Some of them piles were 12, 14 foot tall on the intersections.
Wow. Yeah, we went up. We were going to go skiing, and then we got up there, and the ski shop was closed and all that. And they're like, "There's nowhere to park," because they didn't have anywhere to put snow, so there's no way to get up there. So we went and had lunch. But yeah, the banks were this high, and
Yeah.
Is
That
it
was
as satisfying? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I was like, I'm racking my brain, like, what else do we do for fun, though? We just started skiing and snowboarding
Oh,
with our
okay.
kids
Yeah.
and stuff. And so that's been
a
been really fun.
something for the winter to get out and do something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
say
love
ski
it.
and snowboarding because I tried to ski and I cannot get into those boots. Oh my gosh, those things suck.
For skiing?
Yes.
They're
Yes.
I
not.
love snowboarding.
Yeah,
But
you
me
do
and
like-
Lily, yes, we'll snowboard. But
Okay.
him and the older two, they ski.
I
Okay.
So we're a
ski.
split
He
family.
snowboards.
Really?
Yeah,
There
and
you
my
go.
daughter snowboards, and my son skis. So we're split too.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have time last year to go, and we haven't actually been last year or the year before.
No, 2 years now we haven't been.
And I feel bad about that. We're looking forward to trying to get up there
Yeah.
and do that more often because you got to have that downtime. We worked so hard so much of the year, a lot of time we were just too tired
exhausted. We just couldn't even.
to take that time, and then you realize,
But
you
we
know
go-
what,
we
life's
go to
slipping
Showdown.
by.
We love Showdown.
I've never been there, but I've heard it's fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where
We got to try that.
What we really like to do is go to the hot spring up there the night before.
That's
Oh.
perfect.
And
yeah.
then get up the next morning. We go skiing with the homeschool group, and it's insanely cheap.
Yeah.
Like
That's
when
awesome.
you do it with like the school. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
It's like
it's a PE class is what they call it.
it's like $100 for 4 of us to ski.
oh, that's
man.
awesome.
Boots, the whole 9 yards.
Well, that was also when I was in charge
Yeah.
of the homeschool group.
Wow.
So like,
Yeah.
because we'll half it for our homeschool members.
That's what I'm talking about.
And
Home,
we'll-
that's my kind of homeschool.
Yeah, the Stillwater, what are we called? Crossblades.
Yep.
Will, or at least they did. So I don't know if that's a thing anymore because
Yeah.
I'm not running it. But for our members, they were any kind of field trip that we did was half.
Oh,
That's awesome.
Yeah. But you were asking if something was satisfying when it comes to the snowplow, and I'm curious where this was going.
Yeah.
'Cause it probably is.
Well, I love plowing snow when, just with a 4-wheeler. And,
Yeah, he loves it.
I mean, I don't like, whatever, love it. I mean, I'll get out there and I'll do it. But while you're doing it, it's very satisfying. Like,
It's like
I don't know
mowing
why.
lawn.
Yeah, some just
Like, yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
No.
It can be either satisfying or very frustrating, or something if something happens. Anyway, my dad loves plowing snow on his 4-wheeler. He's out there plowing. He probably shouldn't even be plowing anymore. Like, it's been plowed. Now you're just
Playing.
pushing rocks. Now you're just Now you're just subjecting yourself to exposure. But when you're driving like the big, huge plows and you're plowing roads, is it as satisfying? Because you don't really get to. I don't know that
See
you
it.
get to see it what you're doing as well. Do
Well, outside your right window, all you see is the snow curl.
you? Okay.
It's very satisfying. It's almost it's
He knew where I was going, and that's why he wanted to bring that up.
It's mesmerizing, honestly. Like to see the snow, just all you see out that right hand side of your truck
Yeah.
is white. Just
Hey.
snow.
So I have a YouTube channel idea for you. All right.
Yeah.
I'm saying, hook up your little GoPro or your DJI or your something, and get 4 hours of that
That
curl,
snow curl.
and put that up with, and just like, just put up that
ASMR.
4 hours of
that's what I was like, what's it
ASMR.
called?
Yeah.
Some
ASMR
music in the background.
of just that sound, that curl.
Probably need to do that one when I don't plan on working for the highway department anymore.
Yeah, no, I would just run it. Like I would be like, that's not me. Who's got that channel? They're like, yeah. They would be like, hey, somebody's running a channel, and like we saw a sign on the,
Sure
we were
it's
watching.
Columbus.
They're all gonna be watching it themselves too.
Yeah, probably.
That's gonna be like, I don't even want to say
But they go
those
to
words.
sleep at nighttime in the
Yeah,
summertime.
they're all gonna be at home watching that.
But no,
They're all gonna be fans of it. They're gonna be buying merch off of you, not knowing it's you. They're gonna be like,
Ooh,
yeah,
there's an idea.
yeah, this channel of just snow plowing. I don't know. I'm just saying, man. You can steal that idea.
But it's one of those deals where it will, if you watch the snowplow curl too long, it'll start to put you to sleep.
See, that's why people will put it on.
Yeah.
People will put it on their TV and just be like, I watch this guy plow snow all
Especially
the time.
the first couple times you do it, you're just like,
Yeah.
Then you get on the Rappelj Road up north when it's really windy.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where it gets scary, though.
The drifts?
Yes, the drifts up north. When you're plowing and all you hit a drift and it's coming, the wind is quartering against you, and your front windshield is whited out for a second.
Oh, wow.
So you
Yeah,
just have to
little scary.
know where you're going,
Just
and
like,
just
yeah.
keep your wheels centered, and
Oh, my gosh.
it's the adrenaline and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
But
We,
Yeah, it's not all mesmerizing.
no,
Like
that part's stressful. That part's very stressful. Or when you're out in the interstate for the first time after a heavy snowstorm, and like at 2:00 in the morning, we'll say, and you're the first vehicle going down the road, and you really don't know where that road is at.
yeah.
Because it's all just white.
It's
Yeah.
all white.
And
It's
stuff.
dark.
Yeah.
There's no definition anywhere, and you're the one putting definition in the road.
Yeah.
It's
I bet you that's scary because, like, am I going to just end up off into a culvert? Like,
a couple times it's like I'm on that left-hand rumble strip and I'm
Yeah.
getting close to the edge. Or I actually one point
Start
I was going
plowing up guardrail for a few seconds before you're off.
guardrail's been hit before. But I was plowing east of Columbus, going. I was like, man, this truck, it's laboring real hard, and all of a sudden it's not laboring anymore. I thought I was still going uphill. I was going downhill. I was that
Oh.
disorientated.
Oh, I've done that driving truck. I used to drive truck for a
Yep.
living. And
And
all of
I'm
a sudden,
like-
sometimes you're just like, what's going on? Like, the truck is working so hard. Like my RPM, and you're just like, you've been driving truck for so many hours. It's a weird thing. It looks like you're going downhill, but you're
Yep.
climbing. And you can't tell. Like, it's very, like you say, you're super disoriented. You're just like,
And you
Anyway.
throw in nobody on the road,
Yeah.
no definition on the road, and it's like it's spatially. You have to spatially orientate with the delineator post up ahead and
yeah,
hope you're in the right spot.
wow.
But beyond that, it's just a fun.
I'm
It
telling
can
you,
be
man.
fun.
We found a guy called Seoul Walker on YouTube, and he walks around Seoul, South Korea, and he doesn't say a word. He just walks for an hour, 2 hours. Sometimes he's on top of a double-decker bus, just riding around Seoul. He's got like, what, almost 400,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And people just tune in and just watch him walk around Seoul and
See
just
if you
see
got caught on
just
Soul
see
Walker.
just see culture, see people walking down, like, oh, look at all these shops. Like, so we went to Seoul recently, and like, we actually found it through my son, who's been stationed over in Korea for like the last 3 years. But before they went over there, they were just like, we just put on Soul Walker because we wanted to see what we were gonna, what is it like over there. And they would just let it play on the TV for hours, and this guy just
Background
it's
noise.
Yep.
it's just background
City noise.
noise. It's just and it's peaceful and whatever, but it's interesting. And you're just like, oh, look at this, and then he just walk and it's just gliding along. I don't know what he's using, if he's got some type of it's just kind of gliding along.
Stabilizer.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but that's his whole YouTube channel, and
Just
he's got
walking.
like
Interesting.
almost 400,000 subscribers. And then we found all kinds of other people that do those in other parts of the world, and like so
Don't-
anyway.
don't think Columbus Walker is going to go over.
Oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get on my one wheel, and I'm just gonna like ride up and down all the alleys, not say a word.
It wouldn't
They're gonna
take
be
you
like,
too long to.
Yeah, I could
you'd
cover
be
the whole
done.
town. But you know what? People are like, this is
Go up
for people in.
Rapplegate or Beartooth Pass.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
But for us, it's every day. But for people in the other parts of the
Yeah.
country, other parts of the world, like would be an experience to see that. It's
coming from a huge, say, Chinese city of 10 million, 100 million people or whatever. To see this small town America would be pretty mesmerizing.
Yeah.
It would be.
Yeah.
But I would say, I don't know what the true. I love just making up statistics. 3/4 of the world lives below the snow line. You
Yeah.
know, like,
oh, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, there's more people that are like never been around snow, or like watching like this huge snowplow shooting this big curl. Like, where is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, we take those things for granted, but to others, that's something to see.
That's one thing. You talk about that. Our small town life here. We take for granted all the mountain ranges we see every day.
Yeah.
I mean, when's the last time you guys stopped and looked at the mountains driving home or whatever? She does every day.
I do. I don't
me,
take them
it's-
for granted. I'm from Iowa.
You're like, I was born in Columbus, so I was born here and went to school here, and I did move away for a little while, but then I came back, so I've been here pretty much my whole life
Yeah.
in Columbus.
I think when I stop and notice it is when it rains. I'm from Southern Nevada, Las Vegas, and so the rain, like, I'm not used to rain. So those those are those moments where it's like, when everybody else is complaining about rain, I'm like, oh, like, it can just rain. Like,
Yeah.
I hate the rain, but I love the rain. It
Yeah.
makes my job easier.
right.
But
But there's some obviously downsides to
Yep.
it. But those are the things that I don't really get too tired of, because I'm like, I would go a year without rain.
yeah, I can't imagine going that long without
Yeah.
rain
either.
or
No.
precipitation of any kind. you know?
It's just like it cleans everything. Everything
Yes.
just seems
I
clean.
love the
Yeah.
I love the pine trees after the rain, and
it
just
washes
the dust
after a
off of
good
them.
rain, and it washes all that dust off.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks so green.
I always the smell of, like, you're up in the mountains, and it's sunny out, and that hot pine smell.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's like childhood. Me growing up is that summer sun warmed pine, and
Yeah. I used to be a driver trainer for a trucking company out of Arizona. One time I picked up this guy. He was from Southern California. He had only lived in L.A., basically in the L.A. area, his whole entire life. Never got out of town, like, whatever.
Oops.
I could tell you a lot about this guy. Interesting. I picked him up, and they said, he's going to be waiting for you at our place at whatever. He'd started with the company. We were out of Phoenix. I had to go to L.A., go pick him up. I got there, and this guy had never been out of L.A. ever in his life, Southern California. And ever in his life. Got in my truck, and I never let people drive like the first day or two. And I would have them with me for like a month. We're going to live in this truck together for a month. So I would just say, hey, they would be like all kind of nervous. They just got their license. They've just passed the test, but they don't have any experience driving a semi-truck. So I would be like, hey, you know what? Relax. You can drive tomorrow or maybe the next day. I'll drive today. I want to get to like know this person and feel comfortable around this person before So anyway, I drove and I headed out. I got us up to I was going around the side of Mount Shasta. He'd been asleep in the back and for hours, and I was just driving. First day, he's just back there sleeping all day. And so we pull over at one point, and I get out to stretch. It's night, and he's in the back, and he's like, it smells like pine sol. I'm like, did you spill some pine sol? It smells like pine sol. I was like, no, that's pine trees. He's like, no, that smells like pine sol. I'm like, you should get outside. It's pine trees. And he just got out and was just like, man, that's crazy, man. It smells like pine sol.
To have never left the city, the area I grew up in, blows my mind.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, I know there's probably more than made up statistics. Probably half the world never leaves their hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just from my brain and the road trips we go on, when we go somewhere, we drive and we stop at all these little hole-in-the-wall places, and just to see all this, just to never have left your hometown ever, or been out into the mountains or seen the stars or whatever, just blows my mind.
It was an experience doing that for a while. I did it for about a year and a half, and I was like showing the outside world to quite a few people.
Yeah.
That was one of my experiences.
That's really cool.
Was like I had a guy who had only been on and I know we're running short on time. I'll tell you this though, I felt bad for this guy. He was a Yavapai Indian who his wife was Apache. She had lost a battle with cancer, and when she passed away, he was an older guy. He had lived with her for years and years and years and years, raised his kids on the Apache reservation. But when she passed away, they're like, "You're not an Apache. Bye." So he was just like, he didn't have anything. Like, he didn't have anything back at the Yavapai reservation. And so he went truck driving. And he had only been on that reservation for he'd never been out of Arizona. I was with I didn't realize that. Like 3 weeks into it, he was like, I didn't explain cruise control to him. And he was like, he'd been driving all the time. And I had just assumed that like it's set up like a car. And like, we were 3 weeks in, and he was like, is that cruise control? And I was like, yeah.
It's
And he was like,
caption.
he'd never had cruise control. And I had not gone over that with him. And then I realized, I was like,
It's a given.
I gotta like explain that to people, every single little thing on this truck, even if I think that this is so basic.
Yeah.
And I took him all over the U.S. and I showed him the outside world, and it was an experience. Like, it was, yeah, I don't know. Like, some people just watch reaction channels on YouTube. Like, that, I love watching reaction channels. Yeah. That was my reaction channel, was getting to watch him react to the outside world.
Seeing the world through another person's eyes. Just like seeing the world through your kids' eyes when they're so excited and seeing things,
I had to explain everything out there. It was wild. But anyway, I could tell you all kinds of stories about that. But
after that fence deal, Alan, the owner of the place, had a small plane. And for some reason, we got on the subject of planes. And he heard that my kids had never went up on a plane before. And basically, short story long, he said, we can fix that tomorrow morning. So we rearranged our travel plans so that our kids could go flying, and I got to go flying too. And the look on my boy's face when he get out of that plane, because it's something he'd never been before, and it was like a 5-minute ride. I mean,
it wasn't too long.
His smile probably was this wide. And his face is normally that wide, and his smile was that wide.
Wow, that's awesome.
I guess mine was pretty big too, but we had a pretty fun flight as well.
No, that's awesome. That's one of those things that you guys will always
remember.
It's one of those deals where you can't turn it down.
Yeah.
You can't. If somebody offers to take your kids flying for free, you can't say no.
No, you're going to rearrange whatever you need to.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool.
But we drive everywhere. Like, our honeymoon was over 4,000 miles.
Yep.
Trip,
Where'd you guys go?
Family.
Obligation vacation.
We had reception here, a reception in Iowa, and a reception in Michigan. And,
Oh, nice.
And we went down to Missouri to see my great grandma.
That's a victory lap.
Yeah,
that is a victory lap.
Yep.
Took the
And-
High Line north.
And then our vacation portion of it was when we went home. We went over the Mackinac Bridge, and then we took the Highway 2 home, back to Montana, and
Well, Rapid
Yeah.
City was where we stayed and actually did our honeymoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
I
stuff
love
that-
road trips. I'm all for road trips.
Yeah.
I love them.
Yeah.
I have to tell you a funny story. I'm going to throw my son under the bus really quick, but you're like that experience. You're like, you got to go take your kids flying, and like
Yeah.
that was awesome and so important to you. And they're going to always. I have a story like that about
He's
my
not,
son.
He's not over it.
No, it's one of those stories that like that we'll always remember. Anyway, but when he was around that age, I was like, hey man, we live not too far from Hoover Dam, and I was like, hey, and so I've always had a thing about flying. I wish I could go fly and all that stuff, but I was colorblind. I'm colorblind, and so I could there was a lot of things limited. You know, I can't go be a commercial pilot or whatever. But I always had a thing about flying, right? And anyway, so I said to him, you know, I'm like, hey man, for your birthday, how about we'll do a rented or like a tour of the dam by helicopter. Would that be the coolest, man? And he was just like, no. I was like, the one I'm telling you about that I was
The
like,
one that
he
thinks
takes forever to talk. He was just like, just uncomfortable silence. No. And I was like, what do you mean no? Who turns down a helicopter trip, over Hoover Dam? And I had this thing all
Yeah.
built up in my mind. When I had the idea, I was like, this is such a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to take him helicopter in this thing. And I had it all built up, right? And I go to him and he was just like, no. I'm like, why not? I don't think so. And I was just like, oh, who turns that down? Anyway,
and now what
long
does he
story
do?
short, he flies Black Hawk helicopters. And he flies helicopters.
That's
And
awesome.
he's out processing in Korea right now. And he's
He was
just
a
transitioned.
commander.
Yeah, as a company commander and of an aviation battalion, in an aviation battalion over in Korea. And he's actually now he's transitioning out of the Army. And he just got accepted in the Coast Guard, and they're going to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and he's
Yeah.
going to fly search and rescue with his helicopter over the North Atlantic. And
Who'd have
anyway,
That's
so
awesome.
I was always wanting to inspire him at that age, and
so
I wanted.
did you go for the helicopter ride?
No.
Nope.
Never did. Never did. So now I'm always cracking up with him. I'm like, dude, look at
remember
you.
that
He sent me
time?
video. I'll show it to you of him flying over Seoul in these beautiful dramatic storm clouds. And he's flying in formation. And they're going by these skyscrapers below the level of the skyscrapers. And as they're going over this river, and there's 26 million people in Seoul, and it's just the neatest video of him just one evening just flying along in formation over Seoul. I'm like, look at you, man. I mean, he's flown in Afghanistan, and he,
all over the U.S.
He's flown all over the U.S.
so
He's
cool.
and had all kinds of those experiences. I was living vicariously through him at that age and trying to
Yeah.
inspire him.
Yeah.
And now we joke about it. I'm like, man, look at you, man. You're flying over Seoul. I couldn't get you to
Maybe
fly
he
over the Hoover
He
Dam.
just wasn't ready for it, and it would have scared him, and then he wouldn't have been a
He's
Black
just
Hawk.
always been very reserved, always been very conservative about things. He's always just been well thought out and everything. And anyway, so it's interesting what we try to do with our kids, or how we try to inspire them, or anyway, share those
Yep.
experiences with them. And you never know where they're going to go. So
That
big
was
moment.
in 2008 during the flood. I got to fly in a Black Hawk, and
Oh.
that's an experience you just
Yeah.
don't forget.
right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, now I want to hear more about all that. So, and now we're short on time, but
Yeah, I
hey,
know.
I appreciate you guys coming and talking with us. This has been a lot of fun. This is why we do this. It's like
Yeah.
we would have never. I would have been like, this guy wrote a funny review and a good review, put a lot of thought into it. I would have never thought about it. We would have never had this type of a sit down
Yeah, it's
conversation to get
awesome.
to know what you're passionate about. So, we appreciate you. It's been great getting to know you guys, and maybe we can do some more sometime. I want to hear more about those things. So, anyway, hey, thank you.
Part
What?
two. I said
Part two, yeah, part two.
Yeah.
And now you guys are rushing out here to go to a bonfire at the high school, right? I mean,
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. We got to quit talking about how good it is in this little community.
I
because
know.
we were
It's
talking
horrible
It
in
is
Montana. It
terrible.
snows
Traffic
11
is
months of the
terrible.
year.
11.
terrible taxes.
Terrible taxes.
Everybody's carrying a gun.
Everybody, nobody's friendly.
We don't go to
Bears.
school.
Neighbors don't look out for each other.
Bears like to chew on
Yeah,
your
you
leg.
don't go to school. Don't. Yeah.
Yep. What else?
Bears strewing your trash all
Don't
over the
have
place.
electricity.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
no
Off-grid
electricity.
Have to haul water.
Wild water.
Wild
Yeah.
turkeys pooping in your yard. It's terrible.
Yep. Horrible place. Don't remove it. It's full. North Dakota's nice.
We have room.
Spacious.
Yep.